so that. Well, I mean, it's not like somebody.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here. It's 6:33 p.m., and I'll call the regular session of the San Gabriel City Council to order. Tonight's Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilmember Harrington.
Thank you, Mayor Pooh. Please stand, place your right hand over your heart, and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Pooh.
Here.
Vice Mayor Menchaca.
Here.
Councilmember Costanzo.
Here.
Councilmember Harrington.
Here.
All right. Approval of agenda order. Any motion?
Move approval.
Okay.
Second.
And no objections. The agenda order is approved. Let's move to presentations.
March 2020 election voter outreach update. Presentation will be made by Michael Sanchez, Public Information Officer for the Los Angeles County Registrar Recorder, County Clerk.
Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you. All right. So thank you for having me here today. So I wanted to go through the strategy and give some examples of what it is that we're doing on a county-wide scale, and if there's any questions relating more specific to the city of San Gabriel, I can certainly do my best to address those. So some of the objectives, some of the goals of our media campaign is to serve our hard to reach and hard to convert audiences. And right now, just to give a sense of how large our county is, we currently have over 5.4 million registered voters. And just last Monday, we mailed out 3.4 million vote-by-mail ballots. And it's only going to continue to grow as we get closer to the March primary election, and then, of course, closer to the November general election as well. So raising awareness on not only the fact that we have an election, but how people vote in general is changing is instrumental to our awareness campaign. And these are some of the objectives that I have laid out here is reaching experienced and active voters as well. And that's something that's a little bit different than what we've done in the past. To be honest, we've been voting the same way for almost 4 decades. And truly all of our outreach efforts in the past were always usually targeting those hard to convert or those younger demographics, the 18 to 34, which historically shows they don't turn out very well. They're the largest demographic of registered voters, but they don't turn out. So one big element in this particular campaign is not only to reach that same demo, but also to reach our experienced voters, people who we know will turn out, and getting them informed of all the changes that are going to be arriving starting February 22nd when the vote centers open and are available for all voters throughout the entire county. So some of the the third point is generating awareness, and some of the largest points is the 11-day voting period, and that allows something that is new to LA County, not new to the state of California. There are other counties throughout the state that have already adopted the vote center model, but for Los Angeles County, this is the first election that allows now 10 additional days before election day to start voting. So it's important not only to us, but I think also for the voters' perspective that they have additional options. They have more days. They can start actually voting early and then make it more convenient for them. The vote center model, which we are now migrating to, and I think one of the biggest storylines that we're trying to combat is we're not losing polling places, but we're gaining vote centers. In the past, voters only had one location. They didn't have 5,400. And in this particular model now, voters now are going to be gaining up to approximately 1,000 vote centers throughout the entire county. And the new accessible ballot marking device, how people will actually read and review and mark their ballot, is also completely new and something that will be utilized for the very first time on a full implement scale. And of course, promoting the participation through effective messaging is what my job is at the registrar's office and what we're trying to do and achieve throughout the entire department. So the phases of the messaging and the timeline, the campaign started on January 7th, and it will continue all the way through election night. And phase one really was focusing on the fact that that voting is changing. And part of that messaging strategy was to almost shock, if you will, and part of the digital and the elements that we had, part of our radio ads, we wanted something that we know would really capture the attention of not only voters who are experienced, but also voters who are new and maybe newly registered voters. And we wanted to also promote the ability of the registration deadline. And just for the council here to understand, the registration deadline still is a state requirement. We are required to have a deadline for the upcoming election, and that date is February 18. However, with the new CVA model and the vote center model, it's not as critical because now through conditional voter registration, which is also referred to as same-day registration, if a voter is eligible but has missed the deadline, they can come to any vote center, and I'm sure many of you may already know what that does entail. So even on election day, if someone is eligible and they have not registered, they're more than welcome to visit any vote center throughout the county. And obviously all of the new elements as how people vote, those were some of the things that was encompassed in the first phase of messaging. So again, it was really just kickstarting the fact that there's an election coming up in March, because again, that's actually new as well. Usually we have our primary in June. So that was one. The second message, of course, was how you vote and voting in general is changing. And of course, register to vote before the deadline. Phase two, which is what we're approaching in now, is the awareness of vote by mail and permanent vote by mail. We do want to promote the voters to become a permanent vote by mail voter if they choose, and then it is an option that's voters are allowed to do year round. The deadline to request a vote by mail ballot for this election is February 25. So that's something that we're promoting as well. If you want to actually vote in the comfort of your home at your own pace, you can do that. If you'd like to get a ballot, make sure to request that by the 25th of February. And in addition to that, the expansion of our vote by mail drop-offs. So now we have 206 vote by mail boxes throughout the entire county, which is double more than what we've ever had in the past. I think the most we've ever done was 2 years ago, and we had 100. So now we have 206. And again, that's really what encompassing phase two is. And we're still sprinkling some general awareness of just the fact that if you can't go to the voting period through the 11 days, vote by mail. So we're still intertwining that original message of voting is changing. There is something new. And phase three will approach the week of February 17th, and that will continue all the way through March 3rd. And that will be generically, voting will start this Saturday, which at that point will be the 22nd of February. And we're really just going to be promoting a couple things. you can vote anywhere. I think one new element that arrives that we're really trying to stress is now families, friends, coworkers can vote together, which is something that wasn't possible under the polling place model. I don't live next to my mother or my father or my grandparents, but now and I would never be able to vote with them at a polling place. And I think that's part of the message that we're trying to convey, is that now this is an opportunity for generations really to kind of go together and experience this for the first time. So in addition to the general message that you can go anywhere and it's available, providing all the resources and tools like the Vote Center lookup tool, I think that's just an additional message that we're also trying to get that out there in our media presentations, in our media campaign. So I do want to talk about 3 county-wide mailings. On the left-hand side, which some of you may have already received or family members may have received, is the official sample ballot. So we are sending that out, and that began mailing on the 27th of January. And that is actually slightly different as well. Previously, it was almost a half size around that. Now it's a full 8.5 by 11 book, and that book is larger than what it has been in years past, because of course of all the information that we have to inform voters of. So there's step-by-step instructions on how you're going to use the ballot marking device. There's step-by-step instructions on how you can use the new interactive sample ballot, which is an optional tool that allows voters to, before going to the vote center, marking their ballot online on their personal device, on their phone, their computer. And it has instructions on that. It has instructions on the electronic roster, electronic poll book, and that capability, allowing voters to go anywhere. So it really is a guide of how and what voters can expect when they vote this February 22nd through March 3rd. And of course, with that, the sample of that voter's ballot, the candidate and contest information, measure information, all that is still included, and that is being mailed to every registered voter. The image in the middle, it's slightly outdated, I apologize. That book is not going to showcase the vote by mail drop-off locations. What it will show, though, is all of the vote center locations throughout the county. Now this, for reference, this was a mailing that we had to do, so there was a cutoff date for us to be able to provide that artwork and that data to our vendor to mail. So currently this book has 901 locations. As of today, we have closer to 970. So in that book, it will have by city and by community name in alpha, organized by alphabetical order, where the nearest vote centers are. And it will also indicate the 11-day vote center and or the 4-day vote center to ensure that voters aren't going to one and it's not open or it's not available yet for voting. So there is an indication there by an asterisk next to the location name. And we always will refer, though, voters for the most up-to-date and accurate information to revert back to our website, lavote.net. And of course, it does reference that in the book that this is a mailing, and there could potentially be additional vote centers open and available to you. And lastly, we are going to be sending out a postcard, a personalized postcard to every registered voter, and it will tell them and provide them their 6 nearest vote centers. Their 2 nearest 11-day vote centers and their 4 nearest 4-day vote center. And again, these are optional in the sense of you don't need to go to these 6, and we emphasize that you can go anywhere, but we do want to provide voters who may not have easy access to technology the ability to go to a location, and we are providing 6. And again, we are also providing more information about the voting experience, how it's changing, the 11-day model, etc. So from a direct mailing standpoint, that's what we are doing now. The books, both the sample ballots is already in the mail. The vote center books began mailing today, so we're going to slowly start seeing that, and you will see that in every postal patron. So one last unique thing about that center mailing is that it's not going to registered voters. It's going to literally every mailbox or PO box within the county. So with that said, it's going to be an additional tool for us to also promote registering to vote, or if you are not eligible, or I'm sorry, if you are not already registered, it does have information that you can still register to vote, and gives that information on how you can do that. So out of home, we're doing a very expanded, a very extensive out-of-home billboard campaign that is also in multilingual languages. So on the images here, you're seeing English and Spanish, but we also have these languages in all 13 Asian-speaking and multilingual languages throughout the county. As of today, we have 240 posters. And for clarity, neighborhood posters, what those are and how those differ from billboards is they're strategically located within communities of throughout the entire county. And we're using data and our partners are using data to indicate where should we put the Korean-speaking billboard. In Koreatown, there's several. And shockingly, in Norwalk, there's a population for Hindi, and we have 2 Hindi billboards in Norwalk and Santa Fe Springs area. So the logic behind this particular placement isn't that we're just throwing it wherever we think might be best. We're relying on the data to tell us there are populations of these communities that speak these languages in these areas of the county, and we're providing them our message of this is voting, it's easy, it's convenient, accessible. And these are the larger bulletins, and these are what you commonly see on large intersections or off the freeway. We currently have 10, and these are considered general coverage locations. And there is a very good likelihood that we're actually going to expand this, but as of today, this is what we have already throughout the county. And again, this doesn't necessarily have the same targeting as it does for the other multilingual languages. This was only available in English and in Spanish, given those are our 2 largest languages in the county. And this is an example of some of our bus and our transit. So on the top is referred to an ultra super king, and that was something I learned actually for this campaign. And this is like from top to bottom, it is wrapped. And we have that available and going throughout the county in 2 languages, English and Spanish. And we also have an additional 1,000 tailgate, which is what you see here on the image, and the side, those are referred to the side banners as well. And we have those over 1,000 of those every day, traveling throughout the entire county, going all the way through Lancaster to Santa Monica and back. And again, general coverage location. We do have English and Spanish, and really the idea behind this is frequency. These things are getting a lot of eyes on them, and there's people cutting traffic, there's people utilizing them, and the best part about this is they also have cards inside of the buses as well, and we have the exact same artwork that you see on the bus inside the bus as well. So if you're either riding it inside, you're getting the message. If you're waiting for it, if you're driving on it yourself or along the streets, you're gonna see our messaging, and again, really we're utilizing these for high frequency traffic. And a little bit about television. So we have right now running English and Spanish, and also Asian languages, both Vietnamese, Korean, Mandarin, Tagalog, and I believe Khmer. And we are having commercials run throughout, I believe they started the second week the 3rd week of January, but currently they are running now, and they will continue to run and follow the same phases of messaging as what I have alluded to in the beginning of the presentation. So right now we're finalizing the general awareness. Next phase, we'll start talking about vote by mail, and those are actually going to begin airing this week. And some of the coverage that we're doing is on broadcast and cable stations. Broadcast provides really the best bang for your buck. You're going to get a lot of eyes, you're going to get a lot of individuals seeing it. And some of the strategy behind television was informing some of our experienced voters, our 65 plus. We're really focusing actually on daytime television. We found data has actually shown that daytime television, after your Judge Judy's, after your court TV, that there are people who are likely retired and watching those shows. And again, it's extremely important to make sure that this message does reach them as well. And we know that not everyone is reliant on the internet. Not everyone doesn't have a smartphone, so television does provide another angle for us to reach that demographic. And of course, anyone that happens to watch that falls outside of those demographics can obviously absorb our message as well. And I'll go ahead and now play you our multicultural demographic video.
The 2020 presidential primary election is coming soon. It's time to be heard and for all of us to vote in 2020.
Now go ahead and play our Spanish.
La elección presidencial 2020 está por llegar. Es tiempo de ser escuchados para que todos nuestros votos sean representados y para que todos votemos. Es el 2020 y es más fácil que nunca. Con solución de votar para todos, el condado de Los Ángeles, el nuevo ballot marking device. Un sistema avanzado, accesible y haciendo el proceso más rápido y fácil. Ahora puedes votar en cualquier centro de voto durante 10 días antes de la elección y el mismo día. Bienvenidos al futuro donde todos votamos. Visite lavote.net para más detalles. Es tiempo de ser escuchados.
So, like I mentioned, right now those are on broadcast and cable televisions. We're also using for our Asian languages, where we will have Asian representation in the video, so that way, if you are seeing that and you're absorbing it, you're kind of essentially relating to the person that you're seeing, and really the objective of that is targeting those specific cultures. And in addition to broadcast and cable, we obviously are very aware that there are other streaming platforms that are available for mostly really our younger demographic, and that's called connected television, also known as streaming TV. So like Roku's, your Apple TVs, Amazon Fire Stick. These are all different devices that allow people that do not have the cable cutters essentially to view, and these commercials are being played on all of the major networks throughout, not just broadcast, but also on cable television as well. So your E Entertainment, BET, the True TV, those are all different stations that are actually, if you are a subscriber to a connected internet provided streaming service and you are watching TV on those specific applications, you're absorbing our message as well. And the beauty with those is you actually have the ability to very specifically target. And again, that's part of the benefit of having a variety of different videos with different languages, with also different individuals that are in the video itself. And right now we're making sure we're targeting 18 plus throughout the entire county of just Los Angeles. So no one in Orange County, nobody in Riverside are seeing these. It's only targeting the Los Angeles County. And radio. So I'm sure everyone probably commutes on average more than they like to. I think I can say that confidently. And the data shows that most people are actually in their car commuting at least 52 minutes on average a day. Essentially, you have an audience in their car thirsting for some type of content, usually not commercials, but in between the music breaks, we understand the importance of still having, again, a high frequency and the ability to, on over 15 stations we're partnering with, has our message. And I think the important thing to relay about these particular radio partnerships is it's not just a commercial in which you're hearing from some voiceover from someone you don't know. With every single radio station that you see on that menu, we actually are partnering with the talent that's on those respective stations. So Kiss FM, Ryan Seacrest and Sissany, they control their morning drive. Alt 98.7, The Woody Show. These are K-Rocky, I'm sure Kevin and Bean, Stryker, and I can go on. And these stations have really cult-like followings. They listen to those particular voices, they hear them, they understand them, they trust them, and we're really capitalizing on the fact that they're endorsing our message, and we are using that to really captivate people who are listening on the radio. And one thing I would like to add before playing an example is it's not just the dials AM, FM. You can also absorb your radio through iHeartMedia, which is an app that iHeartMedia particularly owns, radio.com, Apple, if you're listening to it on Apple streaming, all those platforms, if you're listening to these stations, you will hear our commercials as well. So it's not just limited to someone who has AM, FM on their car or maybe at a radio at work. And with that said, I'll go ahead and play an example from Kiss FM.
Hey, LA County residents, it's Crystal.
I apologize, that's AMP 97.1.
Election will be here soon. And thanks to the all-new, fully accessible ballot marking device, casting your paper ballot in LA County has never been easier. There will be 11 consecutive days of voting starting February 22nd through March 3rd. And you now have the freedom to vote at any vote center in Los Angeles County. Learn more about what's new and register to vote before the February 18th deadline at lavote.net. That's lavote.net.
All right, and then I'll play one more.
Hey, it's Ryan and Sissany. The 2020 presidential primary elections coming soon. Now, there's some very exciting news for LA County residents.
So that was an example of two 30-second commercials. We're utilizing 60-second, we're utilizing 15-second, and even 5-second commercials that are really those very quick, snappy, single message. And those are great for deadlines, like the registration or vote by mail deadline, or just in general. Voting has started. Get out now. Learn more at lavote.net. And right now we're playing over 5,600 different on-air spots throughout those respective stations, and each one of those stations does hit a different demographic, and I think that's a key point to remember in this. When you have your audience listening to KFI, that's more of your voters or people who are probably experienced with the voting process. And again, this isn't like a previous campaign that's only targeting new voters. We want to make sure that people who are voting already and have been for decades are fully aware of this, and a lot of additional value that these partnerships bring is also in-person interviews with their respective talents. So later this month, we're actually going to spend an entire day at 3 different studios with Ryan Seacrest, with on AM 570 with Petros and Money, KFI with Tom Conway, and Pat Prescott on the Wave. We're literally spending an entire day, or 2 days actually, going to different studios, having an integration into their actual their shows, as obviously it gets a little bit closer to the election, and it's really starting to become top of mind. And so that was the strategy in which we're placing and picking all of our stations that you see here. Again, though, we're not limited to only English. We understand the significance of having multilingual languages with the same message. So we also are having additional in Spanish and also Chinese, Korean, and Mandarin. And these are some of the stations that we are currently partnering with. And there is a possibility of expansion, definitely through the November election, or as we approach the November election. But for now, this is the partnership that we have in place. And as you can see, there's over 1,300 30-second and 50-second spots, and 700 spots for our Asian-speaking languages. And I'll go ahead and play an example right now of our Spanish.
Paisanos, soy Violín. Ya se acerca la elección primaria presidencial y este 2020 el Condado de Los Ángeles ofrecerá una nueva forma de votar que será mucho más fácil para todos nosotros. Tendrán 11 días para votar, del 22 de febrero hasta el 3 de marzo. Elige entre 1,000 centros de votación con nuevos dispositivos de marcación y pantalla táctil ajustable. Será mucho más fácil leer y marcar tu boleta. Visita hoy mismo la página lavote.net para más detalles y regístrate para votar antes del 18 de febrero. Hagámoslo juntos.
So Pioline is probably one of our better performing partners. And when we had our mock election back in September of 19, he on his own brought, I think, 250 people to our Norwalk headquarters to experience the new voting system, and of course to probably see him. I mean, let's be serious. He is a celebrity in his own right, and this is some of the power that, again, having these endorsements from not only our Spanish and Asian-speaking languages, but also on the English side as well. So again, it kind of just doubled down on the importance of having an actual endorser back your campaign, and that's what we have here with our entire radio spots. And this is an example in a couple of photos that we took earlier, actually a month and a half ago. We're integrating ourselves not just on an earned level, but also on a partnership level. And this is on Estrella TV, where we're actually on their in vivo segments. These are quick 1-minute snippets that are played throughout numerous times on a single day. We're also utilizing 6 news interviews, which are completely controlled by us. And this specific example is only for Spanish, our Spanish partnerships. And of course, 6 5-minute live segments, which essentially allows us to go to those respective radio stations and have a conversation, really raise awareness on what it is that we would like, which is whether it's general VSAP and general voting, voting by mail, getting out and vote, etc. So that's, again, is a unique element that was ingrained in this campaign, as we really wanted to not only be on only radio ads or TV commercials, but we wanted to actually reach people while they're actually listening or tuning in, and news coverage does that. So I'm going to transition a little to our digital media. Now, this is for some of our audience members who, again, are newer voters, are really focusing on those who are 18 years of age and or 18 to, I believe, 35. And Pandora actually has, again, just like every other digital streaming platform, the ability to really target. And what we're currently partnered with them is nearly 8 million impressions. And an impression is the act of seeing or hearing an advertisement. So essentially, they're going to push out through their platform that number of radio spots. And that voiced message is going to be provided by us. The script is provided by us. Here's an example of what you would see on your phone. If on the left-hand side, that actually would be, if you did click on that link to learn more, it would show you the video of the new voting experience. Another element that's very unique to Pandora, if you are users of the application, you might have seen it yourself, it actually promotes an hour, it actually provides a benefit to the consumer. If they watch an advertisement, they get a free hour of music without any commercial interruptions. So we're taking advantage of that. And we saw actually from 2018 that it was extremely successful. A lot of people, they want to get that hour, and we want to be able to be not bothered anymore by other advertisements. And again, it's a legitimate way for us to ensure that people are actually seeing our video, hearing our voice spots. And again, we have the ability to target low propensity and high propensity with different messages. So someone that we know is going to vote, we may not need to necessarily try to convince them as much as we would someone who is younger. And that's part of that. And I think there's a spot here, but for that matter, I think everyone kind of gets. Do you guys have a desire to listen to it? It's a similar message. Website ads and targeting. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I didn't click on a pair of shoes and I saw an advertisement like 20 minutes later looking at ESPN.com. What we're utilizing and we are incorporating into this campaign is a very heavy targeted digital website banners, essentially. And these are, again, geolocated throughout just the county within our target demographic, and it will deliver over 18 million impressions. So again, 18 million eyeballs seeing our advertisement. And it's not just on our partnering websites. So like it's not just on kissfm.com or krock.com. If you are going to ESPN or CNN, anyone that has those audience networks, they will see the advertisement. Social media. We can't forget social media. Everyone's on it more so. There are probably people right now as I'm speaking on social media. And we're utilizing that. We know people need to be informed, and it's part, for a younger demographic really, it's part of the reason why that's one of the main reasons, or one of the main vehicles that people consume their news now. It's not always traditional TV and radio. So we are absolutely going to utilize that in both Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. On the right-hand side, you see an example of a story that's featured on Instagram. If they like it, they want to learn more, they can swipe up, and it'll direct them straight to our website where they can attain more information, or possibly as we get to the voting period, it'll swipe up and take them directly to the Vote Center Locator tool. These are just other examples of some of our partnering social media. So again, part of this partnership is utilizing station and talent social media. Some of these people have millions of followers. Again, that's really amplifying our reach. It's amplifying our message. And on here's a couple of examples of when we went down to studios and showed people. Fred Rogan is the one on the left-hand side, and it actually does a tutorial video and gives the thumbs up of how much they enjoyed it. And again, more examples of this. This was actually at our demonstration center not too long ago, of voters who came, or not voters, but people who attended that particular facility. They may be voters, they may not, but we wanted to provide awareness to them regardless. And again, this is another example of the type of organic posts that we're able to provide and do. And what we're doing and what we're committing to is the ability to actually send out to stakeholders, to city clerks, to cities, to anyone really who asks, is a shared social media calendar along with the actual with the actual posts like you see on the one above. And we can provide that for both Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we are posting on a daily basis about the different elements, different deadlines, really key information that everyone needs to know. Print media. We absolutely have print media involved. 72 print ads will be accompanying this campaign. and that's across 18 different newspapers. They're not all listed on this particular slide, but you can see we do and have not forgotten about our multilingual newspapers. So the Asian Journal, the Singtao Daily, the Korean Daily, LA Times en Español, La Opinión. We're going to be absolutely focusing on providing our message in those newspapers as well as full page colored advertisements. And some of you, if you are subscribers to these newspapers, you may have already seen them. Earned media, as I kind of alluded to earlier, this is something that we are leveraging at no cost to us. Just this week, I think Dean Logan, our department head, has provided, today alone, he did 3 different interviews. Yesterday, he did 2. Last Friday, we were in El Segundo doing a Spectrum 1 News TV that's going to be airing, I think, tonight or maybe tomorrow. So we're absolutely utilizing earned coverage. People are literally reaching out to me on a daily basis. They're thirsty for news, and we love the opportunity and the ability to provide that to them. So featured stories, interviews, a media roundtable, which is scheduled in a week and a half from today. That's going to be something that myself will be conducting, a presentation very similar to this one, but also really of what do voters need to know, how can media assist, and then also the logistics for them as well on election day and during the voting period. How the resources that they can find at their disposal, B-roll to show video that's available to them, photos, etc. So these are all things that we're accompanying, again, at no cost to us. And last but not least, we're in the field on a daily basis. This month, we actually just crossed over 500 community demonstrations or presentations, a milestone that we had set, I think, back a year ago. I think the original goal was 350, but quite literally, we had not only have beefed up our outreach team, but we are also hitting different elements, different cities, different stakeholders, different jurisdictions on a daily basis. And we were happy enough to see that we this month reached over 500 different presentations. VSAP demo centers, that's something that we have been allowing and been doing since November, and we'll continue to do throughout the remainder of this month. And then Jingle Ball and Alter Ego were actually concerts that were involved with our partnerships for both iHeartMedia, and at both of those concerts saw 15,000 people or more, and we actually had real on-site activation, meaning we had our demonstration units at those locations. We were able to incentivize a little bit since it's not a real election, and people were able to flock to our booth, go through the experience, and in some cases win an experience, whether that was a behind the stage pass or VIP tickets to something. So again, those are 2 elements that really saw a lot of frequency in people and in our outreach efforts. And collaborations, Uber, Lyft, Metro. I think Lyft this week mentioned that they're partnering with several community-based organizations, really nationally, but they're allowing for local regional branches to start partnering. And what they're offering is only on election day, free or discounted rides. But we do have direct communication with these platforms. Unfortunately, getting them to expand the days of free or discounted rides isn't the easiest thing to do. For them, it's all about dollars and cents, and if it hurts their bottom line, it's not always going to be the easiest thing to convince them to give out free rides. But those conversations are occurring, and myself, my team back at the office, the registrar's office, we are ongoing those. We're looking into other elements like notifications. So if someone's in a Lyft or in an Uber and they're driving past a vote center, we're thinking about possibly for the November election having some type of notification alert that identifies as much. Metro, we're working with them and we actually have some of our vote centers near metros, several metros. And Public Works, again, a county department, they're giving us assets to post even more neighborhood bus shelters. And again, just another additional really resource for us to really get the message out there. And with that, I know I just threw a lot of information at you about a lot of different things, and I understand it may be a little overwhelming, so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Okay, thank you for a very detailed presentation. I also want to thank the LA County Registrar Recorder for allowing us to have 2 11-day vote centers here in the city of San Gabriel, one at the San Gabriel Library, so thank you, Julie, and also one at our Community Services Department building. And there'll also be two 4-day voting centers. Is that correct? Sharon, can you remind me where those locations are? So Dewey Elementary School and the Christian Fellowship lobby. Okay. But if you just remember library and community services, you can go anytime. Well, not anytime. I think it's 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the 10 days leading up to the election date, and then it's expanded hours, something like 7 a.m. to
8 p.m.
to 8 p.m. on election day itself. All right. Any questions from the council? Okay. One question. Go ahead.
Not one, but
Oh,
several.
really? Okay.
I'm sorry. We can go quickly. What was your name again? I'm sorry.
Mike Sanchez.
Mike Sanchez, okay. Mike, what's the goal for the voter turnout? Are you hoping to reach 40%, 50%, 60%?
So we're hoping to reach 100%, but no, I think
Realistically?
it's kind of looking into a crystal ball. It's hard to say. I would not be surprised if we're reaching near 70% turnout. There is a very high, in our particular political climate, there are people who are very actively involved and people who are learning more about, and people who are increasing the voter registrations on a daily basis. Like I said, we have 5.5 million nearly registered voters, which is largest ever in the country. And I think one thing that from a media's perspective, turnout isn't always going to be a direct indication of how well or how thorough our media campaign was, given that there is going to be a choice at the end of the day. We're still dealing with human behavior and humans who may just choose not to, but that doesn't mean to say they didn't hear any of the advertisements or know about them. But again, I can say with confidence from hearing from my department head, he wouldn't be surprised, and I wouldn't be surprised either if we did reach somewhere near the 70% turnout.
That would be excellent. I'll be happy with 60%. We're just creatures of habit, and as much as you emphasize the fact that we have voting centers, people are still going to be probably going back to their polling places because that's what we're used to.
Sure.
And I know in another city, and I'm hoping in our city too, because I've shared this, they're going to be putting signs at their typical places. For example, in my area, we go to Church of Our Savior. Have there been some thoughts just in general to do something like that, that if, places that have been polling places for decades, putting signs and redirecting people?
Yes, we're doing exactly that. In fact, we're going to be sending out a poster, if you will, to every polling place that was one within the last election cycle. And if they are not a vote center, we're going to actually give them that poster that will redirect them to our website and or possibly the nearest location to them specifically. So
it'll
yes.
be a physical poster.
Correct.
That people could see.
Correct.
Okay, well that's
And we're
good
also
to hear.
on that particular note, we're also communicating directly through robocalls and email blasts to those either if they were homeowners or if they were owners of a particular building, letting them know that if they do receive information or when they do receive this poster, if they could have their staff essentially trained to escort or at least provide information on where they could go.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. 'Cause I thought it was only a couple cities that were going to do it themselves, take it upon themselves. But if LA County is going to be assisting, then that's even
We
better.
are absolutely assisting.
So I heard this week that people could show up at the voting centers, but they can now opt to do the hand mark paper ballots instead of the ballot marking devices. That capability is now available.
Correct. As part of the conditions set by our certification, we are providing, upon request, an official write-in ballot. I don't have an example with me today, but what that essentially looks like is an 8.5 by 14 blank ballot that has 2 columns, a column for the contest and a column for the selections. Now, this experience is not going to be like the vote by mail experience. The voter would have to actually input and hand mark the contest in which they would like to vote for, and then their selection. And how they're going to have access to knowing who they're eligible to vote for is through the promotion of us telling voters, bring your sample ballot, and or the interactive sample ballot, which is available on smart devices, mobile devices. And if a voter doesn't have a mobile device, we actually have phones at the vote center for our election workers, and they will be trained to provide that to the voter so that they can at minimum see who they're eligible to vote for, and then make their selections on that physical piece of paper. But yes, we will provide that at every vote center, and we will provide those to the voter upon their request.
Okay. And we're one of the cities similar to Beverly Hills, although Beverly Hills filed I guess a lawsuit that was dropped, but we're not. However, I wanted to learn what kind of mitigating efforts there are going to be for our council election, because we have more than 4 candidates. And so I know there's the more button, but I was also told that while we're standing in line to vote, there will be some additional paperwork or instructions. It has to be city by city, I guess, or for specific elections that have that, predicament, I guess.
Right.
Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Sure, absolutely. So I can't speak on the litigation, but I can tell you what we are doing to obviously provide awareness. When every voter comes in to vote, when they check in, they're going to be handed a card that shows them exactly how they can vote on the ballot marking device. And on that card specifically states for voters that there is a more button, and that if they are to view all of their selections, they need to hit that more button. In addition to that physical card that will be handed to every voter who comes in, they will be told by our election workers that there may be a contest or a race that has more than 4. Please make sure you review all of your selections before moving forward. Additionally, we will have 2 kiosks. On those kiosks, there is a dedicated side just on the more button topic. And again, that will be right next to the check-in table. So when voters do come in, they will be walking by that. They will be seeing that. We provided information in the sample ballot booklet as well. So when voters do receive those books, and when they're learning how they should or how they can vote on the ballot marking device, it will mention that there is a more button, and they need to press that to view those selections. And every promotional material that we're providing on a social media level or on a digital level for email blasts or newsletters, we're also providing that information as well. But at the vote center physically, the main sources that we're raising awareness is the fact that there is a card being handed to every voter, and the fact that they're being verbally told by the staff that there may be more candidates.
So when you hit the more, can you go back? Or,
yes.
Okay, so you can go back and forth within that category.
Correct. You can go back and forth when you hit. So to explain it a little bit, and to give it some context, when we did the mock election, we had found that this could be a problem. We actually had a lot of feedback received from people who were going to our mock election saying that we should make it bigger, we should make it more apparent. And that's what we did. We made it physically larger. We added a glowing, pulsing ring, if you will, around the button itself. So if you're there standing in front of the screen, it literally is flashing this gold light at you. And when you do hit that button, it will slide down. You'll see the next 4 candidates, and then you'll have the option to hit the more button up arrow, or if there are even more candidates, hit the more button going down. And from that capacity, that's some of the enhancements that we had put in place for the March primary election.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? No? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And speaking of voting in the election, next we have a presentation on an update on our Measure SG.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I feel like I wish I'd gone before that, because with our smaller budget and our rules of only being able to do education and outreach, our campaign pales in comparison to what the county is able to do. But I think it's pretty terrific. So I just wanted to give a brief update to the council and the community on what we are doing for our education and outreach efforts. Just to remind everybody, the team that we're working with is all of our department heads, our Assistant City Manager, Armine, our PIO, John Fu, our City Attorney's Office has been instrumental, as well as Imprenta, our education and outreach consultant. Our campaign focuses on 3 areas: print media, digital media, and town hall meetings. For our print media, one of our main sources has been our grapevine, and this gets to every resident in the city. And I found out a few weeks ago, actually, there are some outside who are unincorporated that are on our mailing list as well, just because of their zip code, and so they end up with those as well. In summer of 2019, we did a general how the budget works, and we talked about the high quality of life and the amount of resources it takes to maintain that here in the city. Our fall issue talked about frequently asked questions and a summary of Measure SG. And then the latest one that got to people's homes a few days ago was focused more on public safety and how San Gabriel's response times and our efforts are better than our neighbors, and why that takes more to maintain than not having those. Other efforts we use are a frequently asked questions sheet that we provide at all of our meetings, and you'll hear about our town hall meetings in a second. Out in the front lobby, there were postcards that we had developed in English, and all of our materials are in English, Chinese, and Spanish. And they're basically focusing on, the postcard focuses on the top 3 messages that we are using, and those will also be disseminated at different locations throughout the city. Places like, we talked to folks at Church of Our Savior and the Mission, so they will be on Sundays in the morning. Folks are volunteering to do that from the community, sort of a grassroots effort. And finally, kind of piggybacking on the information that we just heard, we have a mailer going out to every address in the city that is multifaceted. It talks about the issues that we're dealing with right now as a community, which are the election day and the changes in the voting policies and procedures. We talk about Census 2020. We have a small section on the Real ID. And finally, we talk about Measure SG. And all of those are basically get out and vote. And again, it's education, not campaigning. Our digital media seems to be very successful. We're using all the channels that we normally use that we have available to us. We have a special MeasureSG.com website that folks have been coming to. We have all of our normal blogs, like the City Manager's Monthly Message. We've been using Weibo and WeChat, and we've been altering the message throughout the week and trying to focus on different areas that are important to the community that we found when we polled the community before we started our outreach campaign on the things that were important to them. We've had 10 town hall meetings just in January alone, and those have been done by Armine and myself, as well as the director team. And we've gone to a diverse group, and we have delivered the message, trying to get that message out to each of those groups in the way that they're used to receiving it. And finally, our next steps, we have 6 more meetings coming up throughout the February timeframe. We will continue our print messaging campaign and our digital messaging campaign. The town hall meetings, we have 2 of them at schools, one in coming up this week at Washington, and then later on in the month in McKinley. And then finally, we'll have one on the 25th of February, which is the week before the election, at the Mission Playhouse lobby. Those will, the final 4 will be advertised on the mailer that goes out citywide as come on out and get your questions answered. And what we hear from feedback from the messaging is that it's getting to folks. We do hear from folks that find out that find that the message of if the county, if we don't do it, the county will, or one of the other taxing agencies, that I hear from folks is very easy to understand, that keeping things local and protecting San Gabriel's local dollars has resonated. So we have altered our presentation a bit and tried to make that message as clear and digestible as possible, and then also focusing on those things that would have to be severely looked at if we were not able to be successful with our campaign. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council has. We will be bringing back an update like this at our last council meeting before the voting day to see if there are anything else that we need to change for the final weeks, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Questions, Vice Mayor Machako?
Yes, so one of your slides where you had the census and Measure SG and the voting, because there is a lot of information right now, is that going to be shown on Channel 3, the Spectrum channel that we have? Because right now it just plays this meeting over and over again. There's not much more there anymore. It would be, I think, a good idea if you can have some information, or maybe even get something from LA County that you can slip in there just to change it up a bit. But I think that's a place that actually people seem to be using.
We will definitely try and do that. Our technology is a bit limited right now. We've been working our way into being televised for these meetings, and that's why that loops. But we can intersperse that over the next couple of weeks, and then obviously over the years to come, we'll get better at that part of it.
Okay. And then I had shared this with you before, but I think it's good for the public to also hear it. There was a concern, actually by several residents, that we were using our tax dollars to on an advocacy level, and that, was that an FPCC violation? And I understand it's educational, it's fact-based, it's information that we're giving to the campaign, to the voters. But could you maybe explain the fine line there? Because I know we've been working with our attorneys to make sure there's no violation and that our tax dollars are being spent as they should be.
I'd be happy to, and that's a great question. Thank you. We have run everything through our city attorney's office, and they have kept us in check as far as making sure we're not running afoul from those requests. The most important thing for us is that you get yourself educated one side of it. Our website and all of our social media doesn't cost city money any city funds for those. And the mailer that you pointed out regarding all of the different information, that is not just Measure SG, that also contains the other items that we're trying to educate the community on. And again, that one is not telling somebody how to vote, it's telling them the facts of whether they vote or not, what will be the outcome of Measure SG.
Well, actually, that was my question. The last one, it's not a grapevine. It's not typically something that we use. It seems to be a whole different publication. So, but that still falls within that criteria?
Keith, maybe you can jump in and correct me if I'm saying something wrong, but we had 4 different topics up there, all of which are of interest to the public, and we had a small, or the backside of that for Measure SG with education and not any advocacy.
Yeah, let me say that they have made a special point of running every single piece of prose past me before it goes out.
Good.
Mr. Lazaretto stated it very well in terms of the distinction. It's balancing. The city has a mission to provide information to the public about the city's operations. That's one of our, on one hand. On the other hand, we have a prohibition for spending money to influence an election campaign. So the balancing act is trying to make sure that the information we're providing is purely factual. And it does not, specifically does not either directly or by implication compel or urge somebody to take a particular course of action. And we've taken it in a direction I think is pretty conservative. My view is you'll notice there's no language in there urging anybody to do anything. We've even excised kind of generic language you often see where they say get out and vote or go ahead and be sure to vote on such and such a date, even though it's not telling people how to vote. We just cut that out so that people don't misconstrue in the context of the rest of the information that we're urging somebody to vote a particular way. So what we are now, this is a little bit this is not exactly a bright line test, right? It's a little bit like you know it when you see it, in the sense that things can be written different ways, and some people, I understand, may look at this and say, well, the way you presented the information, you can only reach one conclusion. Nevertheless, we're very careful not to include anything in there that's sort of an advocacy piece, even if the information does maybe lead people to a particular conclusion. And the other thing I want you to know is that we're trying, because there's not a clear, bright line to follow in terms of what someone might later say is advocacy or not advocacy. We've been following the example of other cities, particularly cities where this issue has been litigated and they've gotten a court to give an opinion about the materials that they produced, and so that we've been consistent with those kinds of materials and that kind of instruction when we're reviewing this.
And if I can add one thing, we have not responded to folks who have had arguments against, even though I think there are times when we could provide information that may change their minds. We want to get out of the business of trying to have a back and forth discussion. So we've had social media posts, we've had folks ask questions in our outreach meetings, and if they say that we're opposed to it, then we state that that's a very valid opinion, and it's not one that we are out to change everybody's mind. We're out to just provide information and let them figure that out for themselves.
Well, that wasn't my next question, is how do we respond to people who just don't want to vote yes on this measure? So
We have said that that is absolutely what you should do as a community member, if that's what your decision is. And conversely, if folks ask us, what more can we do? How can we spread the word? We don't engage that either. I mean, there are folks that want to put signs up in their yards and those kinds of things, and that's not where we live in this area. So,
okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And just to clarify, and so it's clear for the public too, that these rules and what both our city manager Mark Lazaretto and city attorney Keith Lemieux have said about restrictions on communications apply to these official city communications, and not to any of us individually as council members. So yeah, I think that there's a distinction there that most people may not appreciate, but just like anybody else in the community, as council member, we're entitled to have our opinion, and we can try to advocate and try to ask people to vote a particular way. But the official city communications are factually based and geared towards education rather than advocacy. So, are there any other questions or comments from the council? Okay, seeing none. Next item, please.
Public comment. This is the time set aside for members of the public to address the City Council on items of interest that are not on the agenda, but are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the San Gabriel City Council. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the City Council cannot answer any questions or take any action until such time as the matter may appear as an item on a future agenda. In an effort to provide everyone with an opportunity to speak, all public comments will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. You will receive a 30-second warning as you approach the end of your time. As a reminder, please be respectful of all speakers regardless of the position they take on any items. If you wish to address the City Council, we request that you please complete a speaker's request card and hand it to the clerk. When speaking, please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Sharon. We have one speaker's request card. It's from Miss Debbie Kilgore.
Good evening to everyone. Number one, I'd like to say to Sergeant Rebecca Gomez and Lieutenant Lopez, thank you very much for the Community Academy that was last Thursday and the one coming up. I did enjoy being able to talk and see the future for that class, but also having the Measure SG there, and Jonathan Few was there, and we were able to ask questions, and I got some information that I was interested in. So that, saying thank you to the chief and the officers in the back also. My address tonight is about parkways. This morning I took my trash out, and there on my parkway was a political yard sign. And I discovered throughout the city are political yard signs sitting on the parkways. It's illegal, and they're also at places that are empty buildings. They're also at businesses in little garden areas. And I did talk to 2 business owners today, and they did not give permission for that to be there. So with the election coming up in 1 month, that as council members, future council members, anybody that is going to be in a political career, you need to know that you are responsible. I don't care who you hire and companies that come and put these signs out, they need to be put in appropriate places, and I want residents of San Gabriel to know. If you find a sign on your property or on your parkway, please call the city's neighborhood improvement services. They need to remove them, although the neighborhood improvement service is very short of people, and it may take a week. So I removed the sign on my property. But as council members, the lawyer, and the city manager, they need to make sure that anybody that is running for political offices in this city does not put their advertisement in inappropriate places. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kilgore. Is there any other member of the public who would like to address the city council? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment. Next, we have consent.
All items listed under the consent calendar are considered routine, and recommendations will be approved in one motion unless a member of the city council or audience requests separate discussion.
I have a suggestion to make regarding the consent calendar. I know it's unusual, but I would request that item E be considered separately for reasons that will be apparent later.
Yes, that's correct. So, so is there a motion, or is there any, for items A through D, are there any other items that we should pull? Okay.
I'd like to pull item D, please.
Okay. Any others? All right, is there a motion then for A through C?
I'll move.
I'll second.
I've got Vice Mayor Menchaca and Councilmember Costanzo for A through C. Let's go to the board.
Motion passes by a vote of 4-0.
Councilmember Herring, would you like to proceed with the discussion on item D?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this is regarding the Ticketmaster agreement, the renewal. I do have some things I'd like to run by Mark and the city attorney, and then get the council input. And I remember this came up a few years ago. It's a 3-year contract with a 3-year renewal. And one thing I noticed is the new renewal is 5 years. And I think that's a little long for a contract like this. I just didn't know why we went to 5 years, because the only way out of this contract is a material breach by the vendor, which I think we really should have a right of termination for convenience if we decide to go with another vendor at one point. And there's a few reasons why in here. The first thing is Section 2, the exclusivity. They would be our exclusive vendor. They are our exclusive vendor for tickets, but I really think we should have the opportunity as the venue owner to allow certain third parties to sell their own tickets if needed, like schools, like for plays, nonprofits. It's not entirely clear here that that's something they could do, because if you look up I looked up a typical ticket price. So for example, let's say there's an $18 face value on the ticket. It ends up costing somebody $26. So it's a 31% markup, basically. Out of that 31%, $2 of the almost $9 goes to Ticketmaster, not to the city, not to anyone else. So I think it's a really, I mean, I know Ticketmaster, that's their business, but it's a really high price. So I think there's some times where we may want to give a community organization, a school, a nonprofit, an ability to sell their own tickets internally. So I think that's something we need to work into this contract. To me, I think the processing fee, the service fee, the credit card fee are all in one-sided, all towards Ticketmaster. For example, they're charging us a $3 processing fee, and we pay the credit card fee unless we put it on the face of the ticket. So we're basically eating all the costs, and then Ticketmaster gets everything. So I think there should be a way to figure out how to even this out. I don't know why we have a service fee and a processing fee that comes up to almost $5 on a $10 ticket. I just think that's too high. We need to. It's our venue. We really need to be in control of that. Section 9, the indemnity, and I brought this up when we first did this. I don't know why we're indemnifying Ticketmaster at all. What are we indemnifying them, and what's the reason? I know it's their standard form, but we should have some negotiating power over that. Section 10, once again, I said the termination. We should have termination for convenience. I don't know why. And if we don't have termination for convenience, I think we should just do a 1-year contract and let it just come up with yearly, because if it's on consent and no one says anything, then it's just automatic. But I just don't like that 5 years. One of the reasons I don't like the 5 years is because they have basically there's a limitation of under Section 12 for remedies. They're basically limiting their liability to a certain event cost if they cause us damage. It would be limited to one event or to $5,000, whatever's more. I just think it's very limited. Under this contract, I don't really see a way we would ever recoup any money if they ever did anything. I'm a fan of, let's get rid of punitive damage or anything like that, but we should at least be made whole. If they cost us $10,000, we should get $10,000. If it's, let's just say there's a sold out performance and for whatever reason they mess it up and all the tickets are wrong or for whatever reason. I don't foresee that happening, but we shouldn't just allow them to just carte blanche. You're limiting their liability. So those are the main things. And if I had to choose one of all of that, it's the termination for convenience, and I do that in all of the contracts that I ever negotiate. Because I say, if you're a good vendor and you're doing good for us, why are you worried about termination for convenience? Our plans may change. Our plan, we may do something different in the future. So I really think if that's the only thing we got out of this, that'd be great. But then the processing and that is like kind of second. If we think, because they have a right to increase it, and if it starts to get exorbitant, we have a way to correct that. So.
Okay. Let me ask to just clarify, because what the current situation is, under the current agreement, there's an evergreen provision that it renews for another 3 years on the same terms unless there's notice given. So are we currently, if we did nothing, the status quo would be to have the existing agreement for another 3-year term. Is that just under section 1? And then my second question, to follow up on what Councilmember Harrington asked, is also Section 2B allows for certain sales that have nothing to do with Ticketmaster. Sales directly at our box office, sales, group sales, season/contract tickets, reasonable number of house seats, so forth. So I'm curious how that, on the practical level, plays out with some of the questions raised by Councilmember Harrington. For example, a school doing a school play. What if they just all did a group sales directly with us, and then therefore didn't have to pay Ticketmaster at all, or it was if it's a small enough thing to. They all purchased tickets, at the box office itself on the, at the event. So I guess I'll ask Rebecca first to respond maybe to some of Councilmember Harrington's questions and my own.
Sure. Good evening, Council and Mayor and Council members. I also have Elias Borjali, our Playhouse manager here, who may be able to answer some of the more technical questions since he deals with Ticketmaster on a daily basis. Just a comment. So this item had not come before the City Council back in 2016, which is why we're asking you to ratify the original agreement tonight. I know they're trying to remember back to that time because that was under prior management. I believe there was discussion maybe with the council. Maybe it was in a study session. I'm not sure. There was no record of the Ticketmaster agreement having been approved, which is, again, why we're asking you to ratify that tonight. Regarding, Jason is correct. So the whole reason that the Mission Playhouse holds box office hours is so that a patron can come and purchase that same ticket without all of those Ticketmaster fees. We are currently reviewing our box office hours to make sure that they are most convenient for the client and for our patrons. But we do currently have hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 2 to 6 p.m. and also an hour before each show. So someone can come, and that is often what many of our clients will do, especially for some of those school performances and such. I'll have Elias speak a little bit more about our comp tickets and how that program works.
But I think as to that, Rebecca, my point is like if, say, a school is doing a production and they wanted to sell it at their school, they wouldn't be allowed to under this
Correct.
agreement. Which I think that's something we should be able to work into this, saying, look, if St. Gabriel wants to do that, we should be able to.
He'll provide a little more information about how that works.
Good evening, council members. So you're correct. So if a school wants to put on a production, we do offer a consignment ticket allotment for each event up to the entire house. So if a school or a community organization wants to come in and produce a show at the Mission Playhouse, they can request all 1,400 tickets with no Ticketmaster fees, and then they can sell those at their place of business and eliminate all those fees for their patrons. So that it's not holding the organization to only selling through Ticketmaster. They can sell it through any brick and mortar. A dance studio can do the same thing. Any organization can come in and elect to take all of their tickets. The one thing about that, though, is it does remove all of those tickets from any online or phone purchases. It also removes the option of coming into our box office to purchase tickets. So we tend to ask that they keep just a few tickets, so if patrons do come to our box office, that they have the option of purchasing tickets for that event.
And Ticketmaster is aware of that?
Yes.
Because that's the exact opposite of what Section 2C says.
Our Ticketmaster representative is the one that actually developed that program with us.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying the contract, then they need to work that into the contract because it says no third party, and we shall not directly or indirectly use, sponsor, promote, advertise, or authorize a third party to engage in selling or at the facility, sale, resale, issuance of tickets. And that's exactly what they're doing. It's a third party, not us doing it offsite. So if they're okay with that, then they would just amend that section. It says San Gabriel can do this, but it's not over the internet. It's not over through any system. But because this is the opposite of that.
I mean, if I might, what I understand is this is just for online sales. So it's an exclusive agreement for online sales.
Online and phone sales.
And sorry?
Online and phone sales. Over the phone.
And phone. Okay. So if that's made clear, then I think that, it removes then the sort of conflict in the language that Councilmember Harrington's pointing out.
Well, except that the agreement says the opposite.
Yeah. It says, well, that's what I'm saying. It needs to be clarified then.
Yeah, we would, if you look at 2A, it says that they're the exclusive seller via any and all means.
So my kind of point is I know this is going on because I've seen events, but we need to memorialize that in the agreement so that a year from now when we're in a 5-year contract, Ticketmaster doesn't say, oh, the city's materially breaching and we want damages. We just want to be able to say, no, it's in the agreement. We can allow third parties to sell as long as they're not doing it over the internet or the other ways that are there to sell. That way, it's just to be safe, so it's very clear. And I know it's a practice, so the agreement should reflect the practice, and especially if they're already in agreement with it and they've helped us set it up, it shouldn't be an issue for them to say, okay, yes, you're not selling it over the internet, you're not advertising, hey, here's a way to get around Ticketmaster, because that's not the goal. It really is the smaller community that, the difference between some members of that community to be able to attend or not may be that $8 fee. It goes from a $10 ticket to an $18 ticket can be a big difference.
Is the exception that you were talking about, does that fall under house seats?
No, because they're selling off-site. House seats are different.
Consignment.
Yeah.
I think the distinction maybe, and the language may need to be more clear. I think the distinction, though, is the third-party provider would be considered an outside ticket sailor, if you will.
That's the inference, but it doesn't say that.
Right.
Even in the definitions, it doesn't say
right.
that. It has a long list of definitions.
Because in the past, that had been utilized where a producer may be able to utilize a different ticket company,
yeah.
and that's what Ticketmaster is working on.
Yeah, I understand that's the goal, but that's not what it's saying. It just needs to be precise. And it just can say no third-party ticket sellers in the profession of selling that. But so, for example, a principal of a school is not a third-party ticket seller. Right. he or she may be out there selling tickets to parents.
Right. And just in response to your question, John, about the current agreement, so Ticketmaster, Elias worked very hard in working with them on getting the lower ticket prices,
Right.
which actually, I'm not sure how much of that had been looked at previously, because it was literally multiple discussions with them, and they were willing to lower those prices. So those lower prices are currently in effect. So with response to your question about when the agreement just roll over, they essentially, even prior to us getting the council approval, because the prior agreement essentially was up in December 2019, those lower prices have been set at this point. So those, for any clients at this point that we're moving forward with. So we can look and have that discussion with them about the possibility of having that be a shorter time frame on the agreement, a 1 year.
Yeah, because there's also that automatic increase of
Right,
25
yeah.
cents starting
Right.
next year.
Right.
Every year.
Which again was still, we were still looking at a better deal than.
No, I went from
than-
$2.75 to $2. No, I saw that,
Right,
but
right. And then I think you had another question about, so about the idea of whether or not Ticketmaster could completely screw up, let's say, a ticket sale, and whether or not we would have major issues with it. So our staff, our box office, the employees of the box office are actually city employees, so they are working directly with Ticketmaster to establish that to develop the tickets and work with the producer back and forth, and they have the ability to work directly with Ticketmaster, but it is our employees that are doing it. It's not a Ticketmaster employee that is at the Playhouse. I just want to make sure that that was clear. So they
as
are.
far as like dates and whatever else is on the ticket, they don't have any input?
Ticketmaster? No. It's our employees that are working directly with the producer and have Ticketmaster at their disposal to work with to make sure that if there are any issues that we need to have resolved, but it is our staff that is setting those.
Thank you.
That, oops.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is that I don't
So
think
that-
it's something that staff is talking about. That's just the termination for convenience. If we're
Right.
able to negotiate a better rate with someone
Yeah,
else.
I think I agree. I mean, I do want to commend Elias and Rebecca for negotiating these lower fees. They are substantially lower than what was in the prior agreement, and that inures directly to the benefit of the public. So that part is actually really great. But I do think that some clarification of the language here is needed, and then it doesn't hurt if we're trying to clarify the language to also ask for termination for convenience, say with 30-day notice, 60.
Yeah, it strikes to me that the termination and the term kind of go together. So in other words, if we're going to say a 1-year term, then maybe
No.
we don't need a termination for convenience, or?
No, I say, I think John would agree that if, it doesn't matter how long the term is, if you can terminate for
Right,
convenience.
that's the flip side of it, is if you can terminate for convenience, maybe we don't care that there's a 5-year term.
Yeah, that term wouldn't matter at that point.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know.
So
it's-
is the priority then the termination for convenience, not the term?
I would say so.
So for me,
and-
that's always the leverage in a contract when you have a third party, is the fact that if we can terminate and, you know, no harm, no foul, no damages, no nothing, it's just, hey, we want to go a different direction, that's more leverage than any other term in the entire contract to get better performance.
Would you be, I mean, the original version had an evergreen. Would you be amenable to an evergreen provided there was a terminate? I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah, in priority, those are, evergreen doesn't, I'm not really concerned
That
about
doesn't
that if
matter
there's
as long as you
termination.
can actually terminate it. So then,
Yeah, and
then
if
it
there's,
is what it
if
is.
there's even a notice period required, 30, 60, 90
Yeah.
days, then that's fine too. I'd
Yeah, I don't
say.
think we're going to make a snap judgment, hey, you're done tomorrow. You know.
No, okay, I got you there. And
We
then
would need
you
to
mentioned the
replace them.
indemnification language. They've got a bunch of a list of specific things
Mm-hmm.
that they want us to indemnify them for, and then there's a list of hardly
Very
anything
general.
that they're indemnifying us for.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm just not big on indemnifying third parties or first parties like this. I have no problem with third party indemnification, but first party and their party of the contract, when you add that to the limitation of liability, it's like we're pretty much, we're never going to collect anything from them, and it's possible they could collect a lot from us.
Well, a lot of the items on the list reflect risks that are kind of impossible for us to even judge, because it's things kind of, to my mind, that are within their control too. So, but it is a specific list rather than a general list. So I guess my question is, are there items on the list specifically that you would have us strike?
Well, I mean, when you start reading through them, we're indemnifying their officers for a default. If the officers don't cause the default, who does? Are their officers or employees? So they could default under the contract and they'd have no liability, basically. They'd have limited liability for the company itself. And even if they made an intentional, we don't like San Gabriel anymore, we're just going to stop performing, there would be, we're indemnifying them for their bad actions.
Well, though in section B below, as I recall anyway, I'd have to see the language, they then agree to indemnify us for their default, I think, under the contract. So, I don't know. It's a bit of a morass, isn't it?
Yeah, that's when you start reading through this. I was like almost having to do like start putting stuff on the board with strings, going like who's doing what, because it does go back and forth. That's why in general I don't like first party indemnifications in almost any agreement, because third party is fine because they're not a party to this contract and they're going to sue us. They sue us both. We decide, hey, we're going to take this risk on of third party lawsuits together unless it was absolutely caused by one party. But when we start indemnifying the parties to the contract from each other, it just gets, like you said, it becomes a morass.
Well, if we're going to take these, if the direction of the council, as I'm seeing some head nods, is to bring this back, then I guess there's no harm in pushing back on the indemnity language and seeing where that goes.
And I can have an
Wouldn't
offline.
be the first time we've had that discussion.
I can have an offline conversation, because some of these things I may not want to say at a meeting.
Gotcha.
Because it's strategic and it could harm the city's position.
Right.
Okay, then can I ask you, Councilmember Harrington, to work with our city attorney's office to provide some red line language, some comments, and then perhaps ask staff then to pursue it with Ticketmaster, and you can tell them that we're just difficult. You know, we're difficult and ornery.
And again, I just want to make sure to give credit where credit is due. So Elias was the one to have the specific conversation with Ticketmaster about the lower prices, and indicated that the 5-year agreement may be part of that. So we may need to review where we are. That may have been a stipulation of the lower.
Right, that may be part of the
price.
trade-off. On the other hand, we might be willing to leave the 5-year as long as they gave us some kind of early out. But so let me make sure I've got the list of what we're talking about.
I actually have it in writing. I can email it to you.
Even better.
Okay, great. And yes, Rebecca and Elias, definitely, great job, because these, I don't think I've ever seen fees actually this low from Ticketmaster. So it's really a great accomplishment. Hopefully they don't start saying, you're asking for all this other stuff, I'm jacking your fees back up again. But so hopefully you can understand where we're coming from, and the comments will be strategic and light. So all right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think we have some special announcements or process here that we need to go through for consent item E. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
So, Mayor, item number E, I'm going to ask that I be recused only for the fact that it deals with my employer, and just to make sure everything's copacetic, I'll step out of the room while you have a possible discussion.
Okay, thank you. We'll allow Councilmember Costanzo a couple minutes to exit the chambers.
No.
No?
We did A through C, yeah. No, we're not doing anything on D. Just E. Yeah, so we're just doing E.
Okay, all right. For the record, I guess it's on video now too, but for the audio record, Councilwoman Costanzo has exited the council chambers. And is there any discussion from the rest of the council here regarding item E?
I'll move the item.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and second. Let's go to the board.
She's not even going to have a chance to sit down.
That's the idea.
Ready to with the-
She left her light on. There you go.
Motion passes by a vote of 3-0.
All right, thank you. Next item, please.
Public hearing for resolution number 20-07, proposed fiscal year 2020 to 2021 Community Development Block Grant Program and Budget Plan. Presentation will be made by Assistant City Manager and Community Development Director Shaparian.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. The item before you tonight is the consideration of the fiscal year 2020-2021 Community Development Block Grant Program and Budget. As you know, the city actually receives funding from CDBG, which is a federal program, through the Los Angeles County Commission, County Community Development Commission. The CDBG funds we receive are restrictive, as they are in every community, and must be used to meet national objectives and serve a low and moderate income population. The program has specific reporting requirements and processes for every step. So every year we come in front of you around this time because this is when we have a sense of what our budget's going to be and what programs will be funded by CDBG. The city has been advised that we can expect to receive a little over $300,000 for 2020-2021. We may also receive a little over $20,000 from the Board of Supervisors for our after-school program. However, the specifics of this possible allocation will not be available until sometime this spring. Staff is recommending continuing all of our current CDBG funded programs. This includes the residential code enforcement, which is used to actually help fund an NIS staff person, street improvement project for streets that are listed on page 4 of the staff report, our youth program, which funds the after-school programs at McKinley School and the summer programs at Marshall Park, Smith Park, and Vincent Lugo Park, which provides recreational opportunities for participating residents residing in the city. The city is required to submit its planning and budgeting documents for fiscal year 2021 actually about a week ago. We asked for a slight extension because our council meeting was not happening until tonight. So it's imperative that an action is taken this evening. And Mayor, I was going to ask you to help us with signing a resolution at the end of this meeting because we need to submit that, if approved, to CDBG tomorrow. Staff requests for the council to adopt the following recommendations. Adopt the attached resolution authorizing the allocation of the CDBG funds for 2021 and for all the activities that are listed. Carry over any CDBG funding that we have that's unspent at the close of fiscal year 1920 and recognize the receipt of fiscal year 2020-2021 CDBG program funds awarded by LACDA to the city for fiscal year 2020-2021. Recognize the receipt of an estimated $20,630 of CDBG funds from Supervisor Barger, if these funds are approved by the supervisors for the after-school program. Approve appropriating $52,034 of previous year CDBG unallocated funds to our fiscal year 2020-2021 program and budget. Allocate any fiscal year 2020-2021 CDBG funds in excess of estimated funds to our street improvement projects or the youth services program, and authorize the city manager to execute new contracts with the LACDA for the allocation of fiscal year 2020-2021 CDBG program and make any necessary adjustments to our budget. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Armene. This is a public hearing item, so I will also open the public hearing portion at this time. Is there any member of the public who would like to address the City Council with respect to this item? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing portion. Council discussion. Is there any questions or comments from the council? No? Are we ready for a motion?
I'll move to approve all 6 of the recommended action.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and second. Let's go to the board. I think you're.
Motion passes by a vote of 4-0.
Okay, thank you. And I will sign it right now, Harmony, so. Next item, please.
We have no new business this evening. It brings us to our second public comment period.
Okay, is there any member of the public who would like to address the San Gabriel City Council? Nobody wants to talk to us. That's okay. No, all right, seeing none, I will close this second public comment session. Next item.
City Manager's Report.
I have nothing tonight, just happy to be here.
Great. Council comments, right? Council comments is the next item. Let's start with Vice Mayor Menchaca.
I just wanted to mention that I was at a League of California Cities conference. It was on overall just good governance. It was a lot of good information. I made some notes here, so I guess indulge me. The first thing that came to mind that I wrote down was about council making sure they never respond during public comment. They shared with us a case where council, all 5 of them were engaging in a response to a public comment, lasted about 6 minutes. And since there was no official public notice, the residents sued and won. So unfortunately, not all 5 of us are here today, but I think it's very important to remind ourselves we should not be responding during public comment unless it's been agendized. The other areas that they talked about was just having caution with regards to addressing any type of financial woes we may have. They talked about there was a lot of risky financing schemes that some cities have decided to indulge in. Over-reliance on land development revenue, to lots of caution there. Regarding retirement plans, there was a mixed bag. Some cities felt that they've taken some action by entering into obligation bonds. One city in particular nearby it was kind of gloating that they are saving $30 million over I forget how many years when they issued a pension obligation bond. And so on the other side was that, you know, it's just a scheme. So I guess just we need to start looking at that. I know we've talked about it, but there's just a lot of options that cities are taking, and we just need to really weigh the risk, and we just need to address it. And of course, census, redistricting commission was also mentioned. They even talked about emojis, how that's been used as evidence during litigation. So make sure our public information officer doesn't use emojis. But I guess the devil emoji could be used as evidence, as intent to hurt somebody. You know, the dance and the champagne is consent intent, and it goes on and on. So just a whole new world out there. It was just really, really interesting. So anyway, so I just wanted to share that with my colleagues and the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Menchaca. Councilmember Harrington?
Nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Councilwoman Costanzo?
Thank you, Mayor Pooh. I am looking forward to a great Lunar New Year festival this Saturday, and I appreciate all the mayor's work on this and also staff's work. I think we're going to have a great day. And I'd also, with my council's approval, would like to adjourn our next meeting in memory of Bob Baldonado, who passed away recently. And if we could have that, and with everyone's approval.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are already perhaps in the works and doing something in Bob's memory and honor. Of course, I think the services are yet to come. So I think the only, the respectful thing would be to at least allow for that to occur first, and so we'll see when maybe not the next meeting, depending on timing, but certainly at a future future meeting, we will be doing that. And thank you for bringing that up. For myself, I attended the ICA conference over the weekend, and I just want to highlight a couple of the panels. One was on cybersecurity and how really vulnerable, I guess, everybody is, no matter who you are. And also a presentation on a homeless shelter that the city of Bellflower had constructed, or is in the process of constructing. It actually was they opted into a sort of consent decree with a particular judge, I think, an activist judge that's in Santa Ana, and that's sort of how they got this process started. And then I think we were also able to apply for some funding for that project. Let's see here. I wanted to comment briefly on SB 50, which is something that we've discussed before here as part of our housing update. And you'll be happy to learn that SB 50 did fail. I mean, it failed on the Senate floor, and we did submit letters and comments to oppose it. And you know, I think it's actually the efforts of a lot of different organizations, including the League, including the ACA, even you know, the Urban Land Institute opposed it. So that's actually quite a relief. But I think the message that, you know, was one of the overarching messages that we at least wanted to send was that, you know, while there is this state housing crisis occurring, SB 50 was not the right solution. So, but there will be other proposals, I'm sure, brought forward in the future. I want to take a brief moment to talk about the Wuhan coronavirus. Of course, we've been hearing and seeing a lot of the media reports, and the numbers, the official numbers reported in China are over 20,000 confirmed cases and over 400 deaths at this point in time. All but 2 of those deaths are actually within China. And staff has been really great in being on top of the issue. And I've been spending a lot of my time recently too in making sure that we're acting responsibly, that we are, you know, we're aware of the most accurate and current information. The LA County Department of Public Health is in close collaboration and communication with the CDC. There is still here in LA County only 1 confirmed case, and the risk of infection in LA County, and actually generally considered throughout the U.S., is considered to be very low. If you go to a website that's publichealth.lacounty.gov, one of the first things you'll see there is a section on the coronavirus. You can click on that for the latest and greatest news and information from LA County Department of Public Health. It says that there's very low risk to the general public, that residents of LA County should feel free to continue with all of their regular activities, that no specific precautions are currently recommended. So while we may see, you know, a lot of folks wearing masks, so forth and so on, what I've been told by healthcare professionals, I've also been in communication with some of our local healthcare professionals, is that you really need this really specialized kind of mask to even help you at all, and then even that may not be, you know, it may or may not really do anything. So in any case, the point is that because the threat level is considered to be low, there's really no precautions that are recommended, and LA County has been very vocal, I think, in trying to, I guess, calm the public and also make sure that accurate information is being disseminated. And I think piggybacking on that is why I think we feel very confident at this particular point in time to continue with our Lunar New Year Festival on Saturday. And I thank Councilwoman Costanzo for her comments about attending on Saturday. And I think that we have been dealing with many other organizations and businesses because of the general concern. But at this point in time, there's really considered to be very low to no risk to the general public at this point in time from this Wuhan coronavirus. Of course, if you have been in Wuhan within the last 14 days, or you've traveled from China in the last 14 days and feel symptoms, flu-like symptoms, then of course, you should go into and get yourself checked. If you've been in close contact with anybody that fits that description, then that's another sort of red flag. But outside of that, it's terrible what's happening in China right now, but there doesn't appear to be a very high risk of infection here in LA County. So I wanted to sort of provide some of that information, and also let the council know that there's currently there's what looks like it will be a daily conference call that LA DPH is holding. And I think, Mark, you were on that call today. I was able to be on that call for about 45 minutes or so today. Again, I think that it's really had a really strong calming effect for me, because these experts in infectious diseases we're talking about, they even think that what was previously reported as it being communicable from people who do not yet exhibit symptoms, they believe that that is actually, there's a very, very, very low risk of that. In other words, we cannot rule out anything 100% completely, but for the most part, communicable diseases are only communicable by people who are already exhibiting symptoms. So in any case, they don't feel that this virus is any different in that respect. So I want to thank the staff for, like Rebecca and her staff, also our outside production agency, KCM, for their hard work. And actually, Fire has been dealing with this issue as well. I'm sure, the police has been in contact with folks who have concerns or are affected by the media and so forth. And I just want to I guess provide some of this information, because there seems to be a lot of misinformation out there, and that at this point in time, again, things can change. There's no question. And if the threat level increases, we would certainly reevaluate our own position. But at this point in time, seems to be very minimal risk of infection of this coronavirus to us here locally in LA County. And I do want to say too that there's actually a really great lineup, that's been organized for the Lunar New Year Festival. So I really do hope that folks will want to and be able to come out to enjoy it, and yeah, I think that it'll be. I think it's a way, for me personally as well, assuming the threat level stays at a minimal level, it's a way of taking this tradition back. This is a tradition that goes back over 5,000 years, and it's a shame in a way that there are two things that strike me, and I'll be making some of these comments too during the opening ceremony, which is that it's a shame that some of these sort of celebrations then have become a little bit tarnished with the timing of this outbreak, and it's certainly a serious thing. But it's also, I think, it's not surprising, but I think there's been so little concern shown for those who are suffering from this in mainland China. And most of the concern is about ourselves and how much risk are we at, and that's perfectly valid and justifiable. But I do think that the number of cases and the number of deaths, particularly within the Wuhan, Hubei region, will continue to increase, and it will be. So those numbers, I think, are going to get worse and worse, and we can just be thankful that. Appropriate actions have been taken. There are now travel restrictions as well as screening at the airports, so forth and so on, and that our health professionals and officials, are monitoring the situation very closely, so that here in LA County, at least in the San Gabriel Valley in particular, we can feel relatively comfortable and safe.
I just wanted to say, Mayor, that I do appreciate your words, and also our city has been very responsible as opposed to reactionary. Some of our neighboring cities have actually canceled their festivals, and now some of that fear is pouring into the schools, not our schools, but neighboring city schools, and I don't know if the school district has had any kind of reaction to it, but I think hopefully they're also doing what's responsible, which is get the facts, make sure we understand, the situation. There's unfortunately been actually fake information. I think it was in Bellflower that got that letter, or maybe it was Carson. Carson. And so there's just so much out there, kind of fear. But I have had comments from the public really appreciating the fact that we're keeping them informed. There's been social media posts about our direct involvement with the Department of Public Health and getting updates from them. So I too will be there on Saturday. I feel very comfortable unless things change. But I do appreciate the staff and, of course, our mayor just to the facts. Let's not get all caught up with some of the fake information. That's the only thing I can think of. So thank you for those words.
Absolutely. And just to Vice Mayor Machaka's point, LA County Department of Public Health is aware of certain other bad actors that are out there forging its logo and using, basically conducting a form of phishing scam or, to try to get personal information from people, things like that. So just be wary for members in the public if you get some kind of communication that appears to be from the Department of Public Health. That's requesting information or telling you you need to contact somebody immediately, something like that. They are not doing that at this point in time. So that is not something that you should put a whole lot of stock in. All right, so with that, I think we will adjourn to the next regular City Council meeting. That will be on February 18th at 6:30 p.m. Although I do think there's a possibility we will have a special session, a study session at 5:30 p.m. that same night. So thank you all for your participation. We are adjourned.